Okay, so anyway, we want to welcome the new members. I'm Charlie Ross. I've been a physician for 45 years in the state of Oregon. I started out in family practice, then went to emergency medicine for 30 years, and last 10 years been doing lifestyle medicine. And then Scott Wagnon, we've been chatting back and forth. There's Scott. He's physician assistant at OMG. That's Oregon Medical Group, not oh my God. But I think of that every time I hear that. And anyway, we're really lucky to have that, to have met each other and to carry on these classes, which we've been doing together now on Zoom for what, 2 years? Or
yeah, it'll be two years in April. 2 years in April it'll be.
Gosh, it seems like a year, but it's 2 full years. And before that, we were each doing our own classes for some time. So we've been at this for a while. We look at the science, we share it with you, and you make up your mind as to what you choose to do. So for any new members, we're just kind of curious how you might have found out about these classes, and that, you know, kind of gives us an idea. So if you know how to unmute, you can do that.
What happened to her?
And say hello.
Well, there she is, right here.
Oh, there she is.
Go ahead. My name's Doug. My wife's been attending these, and I have abdominal aorta aneurysm, and my doctor's been watching it for a couple of years. She put me on a statin, and I had some complications from it, and so I'm going to try vegan.
Well, welcome, Doug. We're really happy to have you. I think you've come to a good place. One of the things that you definitely want to control is your blood pressure. And by eating a whole food plant-based diet, which is non-processed, you'll have much less risk for higher blood pressure, which would tend to expand that AAA, abdominal aortic aneurysm, that you have. And as far as your cholesterol is concerned, you'll also lower that, and it'll be a much healthier route. And after a while, you may find, like I found, that you actually like eating this way. You know, when I first started doing this, there was no way that I wanted to do this. I thought, no, I like how I'm eating, and what's the sense of living if you can't eat what you enjoy eating? That was 10 years ago. But my wife had a really strong heart history, and for her sake, I decided I would do this for her for a month. And if it worked, she could keep doing it, and I'd go back and eat my cheeseburger and French fries and ice cream every night, and the things that I really enjoyed. Well, after a month, my cholesterol dropped from 240 to 148 in 1 month, 30 days. I was never hungry a day. I was feeling great. And my weight had come down 10 pounds without even trying. Now I'm down to my ideal weight, which is 40 pounds less than when I started. And I love what I'm eating. Actually, I do not desire to eat any of those things, even though they may make my mouth water. If I see dripping cheese or a bacon, whatever it is on the commercial, and I used to love that stuff. Now the word that comes to my brain is poison. And I say, you know, my mouth is salivating like Pavlov's dog, but I know that's really not healthy for me. And I like what I'm eating. I have dessert every single meal. Do you know what that is?
Fruit.
Yeah, it's fruit. Fruit has become so sweet because I'm no longer eating the brownies and the cookies and the white sugars and the things that just blasted my body with kind of artificial sweetness. And so I wish the same for you. Keep coming to a few classes, then decide whether this is something that will work for you also. And others have done this and gotten significant benefit. Maybe someone in the class wants to say something about the benefit they've had.
Well, I'm a big mouth, so I'll talk.
Okay.
Doug, you'll feel better. Your blood work will improve.
It did for you.
And it has for me. I had carotid artery problems, and my last blood work or blood test on the right side, the numbers have improved, which means my arteries open up some. It's gotten cleaned out a little bit, so it's flowing better. It's better blood flow, and overall, we're just healthier. The weight loss for us was a side thing. We didn't have to do this for weight loss, but we both benefited from it. I didn't have to buy bigger pants, which I was right at that edge. I was right there pushing it. So we just overall feel better and just looking forward to better improvements as we go. We've been at it a year plus.
And his circulation's better, and he has vascular disease. He's already had a double bypass, and I think we're up to 5 stents.
5 stent double bypass.
So him not getting the stent on one side, and where they just removed the calcified, and then the opening up of the other side is a big deal. This has been going on for 25, 30 years. So this is really nice that nothing's going on.
But my blood pressure is dropping. My cholesterol, blood test for my cholesterol is just dropped tremendously. I'm still on a medication, but I don't know that that's going to last forever. But things are getting better every day. You know, just each one of us takes a little different time-wise, but it's a good thing. And I sometimes get kind of excited about looking at a hamburger, but I don't want one. It just, we had, what did we have? We had something not long ago that we really tasted, and turned out it was so full of fat that it was in our mouth. It was just gross.
I don't know what we ate.
We didn't like it. It was horrible, but we hadn't had that. We eliminated the oils and the fats, and all of a sudden that looked good, but it was not. So
it was supposed to be healthy.
Well,
I
Virgil,
can't remember what it was.
Virgil and Marilyn, thank you very much for encouraging the new people. There's one other new one who had her hand up. I think it's West. Are you still around? You just have to unmute. Let's see. It says west, 19 degrees. And your friend brought you here. Yes?
Oh, Trotty, you gotta unmute.
But I'm not West.
Oh, okay. It says, West on there.
No West. I tell you who I am. I'm
Okay.
Claudie Lerch. Lerch.
Lerch, okay.
That's my last name. Trouty is my first name.
Trouty.
So I've been six weeks on the whole plant diet.
Uh-huh.
I had one open heart surgery before that 2 months ago, and I had one bypass. And Chevelle was the one that revealed everything to me, including a wonderful, wonderful book. I read it the second time now. And I'm sold on the whole plant food so far. I don't need anything else. Not hungry, anything, but I have my lentil pot. You know, in the evening I eat the lentils. That makes me full till the morning, and it's enough protein.
Nice.
So I don't need no hamburgers. I'm not tempted on. The only thing I'm tempted on, and I give in on that, is chocolate. I'm a chocoholic. Okay. But, you know, the rest of it, you know, I make an exception for that one, but the rest of it's all fine.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to the class, and we'll share the science with you, and then you'll decide what else you do. And it sounds like you're doing well, though. Nice,
yeah,
nice work.
Really got me. going on it. Yeah. And she told me about the class here. So yeah, it's too well. Away for her.
Well, thank you very much again.
We're glad you're here, Trouty.
I am too. So far, so good. Let's see what it's all about.
I can share a little story too. I'm not exactly new. I've been here a few times, but 5 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare and difficult high-grade cancer. I was treated up at OHSU, and the doctor recommended lots of meat. She said, I need protein. I was vegetarian at the time, but not, I was eating all kinds of junk, you know, and dairy and eggs. Anyway, I kind of did the opposite. I went, you know, cold turkey, completely vegan and whole food and anti-inflammatory, and I declined chemo. The prognosis was not very good. And here I am 5 years later, about, I don't know, a year after I was well again, I started eating not animal, well, I started eating dairy again and eggs again and gained a bunch of weight. And here I am back to be inspired.
Well, welcome. We're so happy to have you. And thank you for sharing that, Linda, with the group. It's important for the people in the group to hear these stories. They connect with one or two or three or more individuals, and much more powerful than anything that we have to say, pretty much. Although we say, you know, we share the science and stuff and share our stories, sometimes that works. But whatever we can do to improve individual health, that's a good story. Anybody else before we get started?
Just a reminder to those that are new in the chat room, I put my email if you want to get on the weekly group email list, and you can also check out the class website. Lots of resources there for you.
Trouty, your hand is still up. Did you have another comment?
Yes.
Or yeah, go ahead.
I had a cardiologist, and he said lots of meat because he wanted me to lose the weight. I lost about almost 50 pounds. And in a very short time, he said lots of meat, lots of fish, poultry, and lots of eggs and dairy. And I ended up getting high cholesterol from it. I lost the weight and I keep the weight down, but I don't need that anymore in order to keep the weight down. But that got me into the problem where I needed the open heart surgery, and because one of my arteries was bent with cholesterol and calcium, and the other part was very closed. The blood almost didn't go through. They were thinking I almost got a heart attack. I couldn't go home anymore. I had to stay at the hospital for 3 days till they get the open heart surgery done. So I changed my cardiologist.
Yeah.
And so now I'm doing what I think is right.
Well, you bring up an important concept here with the keto diet, which is effectively what
everybody.
Yeah, you bring up when you're eating high fat, high protein diets, and you're you may get some short-term weight loss benefits, but you are really putting yourself at risk for decreased blood flow at the end of a year, is what the studies show, and decreased life expectancy if you keep it up. So good for you for.
I almost died with it because it said you can't go back home. You get a heart attack or a stroke.
Did everybody in the room hear what she just said? Because I just want to, you know, we have said it before, but, you know, here it is from someone who's actually suffered the consequences of unhealthy food choices, even though in the media, they're promoted as healthy. Okay, I silenced the room with that comment. Thank you for sharing that, Trotty.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right. What we're going to do, you'll have
Me,
time.
Riley.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Mary.
Oh, I was just thinking, remember the days when we were getting to the point where we knew that smoking was going to kill us? And eventually the Marlboro man died of smoking, and then they banned cigarette commercials. I'm wondering if we'll get to the day when that Carl's Jr. commercial of "Breathe in the bacon" will ever be banned.
I hope I live to see it. I hope I live to see it.
I'm not really a hamburger kind of person, but every time I see that commercial, my blood starts to boil. Breathe in the bacon. It's like, oh my God.
I've never actually seen that, but that sounds pretty horrible.
Oh, check it out. It's something else. It needs to, maybe we'll get those kind of commercials banned in the future.
Well, while we're on that light about the false advertising and how we can get influenced by the media, if you are more overweight when you're older, are you healthier? There was a study that came out just within the last few years that seemed to imply that those who were a bit more overweight had a longer life expectancies than those of a lesser. Have you all heard of that?
I have.
And did you think about that? Like, geez, I don't want to be too thin or I might die sooner. So what I want to do is start with a video that's going to bust that myth for you and kind of set your brain thinking about the science of this whole thing. Okay, so I need to kind of share my screen with you. And we're going to start with, I wonder who? No, Dr. Greger is going to, or young Dr. Greger is going to talk, is the obesity paradox real or a myth? Let's listen.
Martin Luther King Jr. warned that human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable, and the same may be true of the human lifespan. In the 1800s, life expectancy was less than 40, but has been steadily increasing over the last 2 centuries, gaining about 2 years per decade. That is, until recently. Longevity gains have faltered or even reversed. Thanks to the obesity epidemic, we may now be raising the first American generation to live shorter lives than their parents. The downward trend in longevity is expected to accelerate as the current younger generation, who started out heavier and earlier than ever before, ages into adulthood. If the obesity epidemic continues unchecked, current trends signal a potential looming social and economic catastrophe. In the coming decades, some predict we may lose 2 to 5 or more years of life expectancy in the United States. I mean, to put that into perspective, a miracle cure for all forms of cancer would only add 3.5 years to the average American lifespan. In other words, reversing the obesity epidemic might save more lives than curing cancer. The evidence of being overweight increases your risk for debilitating diseases like diabetes is considered indisputable. But surprisingly, there's controversy surrounding body weight and overall mortality. In 2013, CDC scientists published a meta-analysis in the Journal of the American Medical Association suggesting being overweight was actually advantageous. Yes, grade 2 3 obesity, like being average height, 5'6", and weighing about 215 plus pounds, was associated with living a shorter life. But grade 1 obesity, between about 185 to 215 pounds at that height, was not, and just being overweight, 155 to 185 pounds, appeared to be protective compared to those who were normal weight, 115 to 155. The overweight individuals, BMI 25 to 30, appeared to live the longest. Headline writers were giddy, right? Being overweight can extend your life. Dreading your diet? Don't worry, plump people live longer. Extra pounds might mean lower chance of death. Not surprisingly, this study ignited a firestorm of controversy in the public health community. The study was called ludicrous, flawed, misleading. The chair of nutrition at Harvard lost his cool, calling the study really a pile of rubbish. Fearing the food industry might exploit this study in the same way the petroleum industry misuses controversy over climate change. Public health advocates can't just dismiss data they find inconvenient, though. I mean, science is science. But how could being overweight increase the risk of life-threatening diseases, yet at the same time make you live longer? This became known as the obesity paradox. The solution to the puzzle appears to lie with two major sources of bias. The first being confounding by smoking. Right? The nicotine in tobacco can lead to weight loss, so if you're skinnier because you smoke, well, then no wonder you'd live a shorter life with a slimmer waist. Right? The failure to control for the effect of smoking in studies purporting to show an obesity paradox leads to the dangers of obesity being grossly underestimated. The second major source of bias is reverse causality. Instead of lower weight leading to life-threatening diseases, isn't it more likely that life-threatening diseases are leading to lower weight? I mean, conditions such as hidden tumors, chronic heart and lung disease, alcoholism, and depression can all cause unintentional weight loss months or even years before they're even diagnosed. It's normal to be overweight in this country, right? So people who are abnormally thin, in other words, ideal weight, I mean, could actually be taking care of themselves, right? But maybe heavy smokers, elderly and frail, or seriously ill with weight loss from their disease. To put the obesity paradox issue to the test once and for all, the Global BMI Mortality Collaboration was formed, reviewing data for more than 10 million people from hundreds of studies in dozens of countries, the largest evaluation of BMI mortality in history. To help eliminate bias, they omitted smokers and those with known chronic disease, and then excluded the first 5 years of follow-up to try to remove from the analysis those with undiagnosed conditions who lost weight due to an impending death. And the results were clear. Being overweight and all grades of obesity were associated with a significantly greater risk of dying prematurely. So adjusting for these biases leads to eliminating the obesity paradox altogether. In other words, the so-called obesity paradox appears to be just a myth. Indeed, when intentional weight loss is actually put to the test, people live longer. There are bariatric surgery studies, like the SOS trial, that show weight loss reduces long-term mortality, and randomizing people to weight loss through lifestyle changes shows the same thing. Losing a dozen pounds through diet and exercise was found to be associated with a 15% drop in overall mortality. Now, I mean, exercise alone may extend the lifespan even without weight loss, but there also appears to be a similar longevity benefit of weight loss through dietary means alone.
Okay, I'm going to stop and the sharing on that for a moment, and just I don't know if that's a surprise to you, but hopefully you have a little better understanding about how that came about and how you may have developed a belief that being a bit more overweight would be healthier for you and lead to a longer life. I hope that myth has been busted, and if it's not, then I would encourage you to go back and review the articles that Dr. Greger reviewed to make that video. The video is the obesity paradox real or a myth? And you can find that on YouTube. You can find it on his site, nutritionfacts.org. So while we're on here, I want to, for the new members, share with you how you get to nutritionfacts.org. You just do a little search by plugging in on the headline here, or the link line, nutritionfacts.org, and you will come up with, let's see, I want you to be able to see what it says. All you need to type in is nutritionfacts.org. You come up with Dr. Greger's site. You have a search bar, and you just plug in the search, and if the search is the video is, let's say you're concerned about overweight, obesity, so let's just look at that. And then you'll have a list. Is the obesity paradox real or a myth? We just played that. And then there are other videos that you may choose to watch, one a day, perhaps, to keep you motivated, and then repeat them the following week, and then repeat them the following week, and just keep listening every day. Make it a habit to listen to the science, learn about it, and it can help you change your beliefs and help you with your motivation for continuing on a path toward health. Any questions for a moment before we continue on? Okay, you can unmute and say hello, and if not, that's okay. I'm gonna kind of mute everybody for a bit and carry on. I just wanna say that I made myself a little outline as to what I was gonna talk about tonight because I wanted to cover the bases. You know, we promote a whole food, plant-based diet. We do it in different ways. I tend to be kind of a lot more aggressive sometimes about, hey, stick to it, do it 100%. Don't be wandering. You know, that's me. And Scott is, you know, he'll do that at times, but he tends to say, you know, we're going to meet you where you're at and we're going to work with you, and it takes gradual time. You know, we went about this slightly differently. He kind of transitioned a little more gradually. I did it kind of in a day. My wife and I watched a video and read a book, and the next day we went out and changed our life. Literally, that's how it worked for us. I did still, I guess, even though a day it was changed, I did still eat egg whites because I believed I needed animal protein. It was a myth. I still kept drinking skim milk until Dr. Esselstyn put me on the path, and he told me, you know, why are you eating that animal protein? You know, you get enough protein if you need enough calories. Why are you counting? What the problem is the fiber in your diet. So he, in essence, saved my life to a degree. So I tend to be the promoter of just do it. But the reality is most people just don't just do it. They do it gradually. They're more in Scott's camp. And yet, Scott also understands, as I do, that for those of you who have, you know, critical, serious illness, like you have chest pain that you're ready to go in and have an angiogram for. It's sort of, I use this analogy, you have 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel. You are sliding into a very serious time. That could be with your diabetes, with your heart disease, with high blood pressure. I'm like, do it all the way. But if you're not in a serious health condition, you can kind of go about this gradually and kind of ease your way into it. So I want to emphasize the point. Both of us understand that what we're sharing with you is there is nothing absolute about any of this. We're all individuals. We do things in different ways. We're not policemen. We don't insist that you do it our way. We do share kind of slightly different approaches, but it's pretty much the same message. If you're getting the benefits you want, you can keep eating like you like. And if you're not getting those benefits, eat more plants. Okay, so that was one point that I wanted to be sure to address with you all. And now I want to reinforce Scott's calorie density talk from last week. That was one of the most important lectures that we have here. If you really understand that concept of calorie density, eating enough bulk to kind of satisfy your body's needs, you'll, you know, lose down to your ideal body weight in a healthy fashion, and you'll be successful at this. So one of the problems that people have is that when they choose to do this, they're thinking, I gotta eat salad, a salad. You know, well, salad has 100 calories a pound, and it's hard to eat enough salad to get enough calories. if you need 1,200 calories a day to kind of live and let your brain function normally, or 1,000, you need 10 or 12 pounds of those non-starchy veggies, which no one's going to eat. So you got to keep in mind the calorie density that he went over. And with that in mind, I want to play a video from Dr. Greger to eat more to weigh less. This is a concept which is hard for those of you who are trying to lose weight, because you've always been taught, push yourself away from the table, eat smaller portions. It's your willpower that's the problem. But that's not the problem. It's the calorie density that's the problem. You can eat pretty much all you want to eat if you eat lower calorie density foods. So let's hear what Dr. Greger has to say about that issue, because I get a little excited about this only because I don't know why. It's fun for me to do that. So here it is, eating more, way less.
What happens if you have people add fruit to their regular diet? 3 apples or 3 pears a day as snacks between meals on top of whatever else they were eating. Fruit is low in calories, but not zero, so if you add food to people's diet, even healthy foods, won't they gain weight? No, they lost a couple pounds. Maybe it was all that fiber? If you remember, we learned our gut bacteria can create anti-obesity compounds from fiber. That's why they also had a cookie group. 3 apples, 3 pears, or 3 cookies with enough oats in them to have about the same amount of fiber as the fruit. Despite the fiber, adding cookies to one's diet does not lead to weight loss. They think the weight-reducing secret of fruit is its low energy density, meaning you get a lot of food for just a few calories, so it fills you up. Energy density is a relatively new concept that has been identified as an important factor in body weight control in both adults and in children and adolescents. Energy density is defined as the amount of calories per unit weight of a food or beverage. Water, for example, provides a significant amount of weight without adding calories. Fiber, too. Thus, foods high in fiber and water are generally lower in energy density. On the other hand, because dietary fat provides the greatest amount of calories per weight, foods high in fat are generally high in energy density. The CDC offers some examples of high-energy density foods are like bacon, lots of calories in a small package. A medium energy density food is like a bagel, and a low-density food typified by fruits and vegetables. In general, the lower the better, with 2 exceptions. Soda is heavy. So heavy that by energy density it looks less harmful than it is, and nuts have so much fat they appear less healthy than they are. Otherwise, though, the science supports a relationship between energy density and body weight, such that consuming diets lower in energy density may be an effective strategy for weight control. This is because people tend to eat a consistent weight of food, so when there's less calories per pound, calorie intake is reduced. A small drop in energy density can lead to a small drop in weight, and the greater the decrease in energy density, the greater the weight loss. Energy density can be reduced in a variety of ways, such as the addition of fruits and vegetables to recipes, or by lowering the fat or sugar content. And indeed, that's how we evolved, eating predominantly low-energy density foods, such as fruits, vegetables, plants, and tubers, starch-filled roots like sweet potatoes. The first study to emphasize how fruits and vegetables could affect energy density and food intake was conducted more than 30 years ago. Researchers were able to cut people's caloric intake nearly in half, from 3,000 calories a day down to 1,570, without cutting portions, just by substituting less calorie-dense foods, which means lots of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, compared to a high-energy density meal with lots of meat and sugar. Nearly half the calories, but they enjoyed the meals just as much. They tried this in Hawaii, putting people on a traditional Hawaiian diet with all the plant foods they could eat. lost an average of 17 pounds in just 21 days, resulting in better cholesterol, triglycerides, blood sugars, and blood pressure. Caloric intake dropped 40%, but not by eating less food. In fact, they lost 17 pounds in 21 days eating more food, 4 pounds of food. But because plants tend to be so calorically dilute, one can stuff oneself without getting the same kind of weight gain. And the energy density of foods is of interest for weight management, not only because it allows people to eat satisfying portions while limiting calories, but also because reductions in energy density are associated with improved dietary quality. For example, lower energy-dense diets associated with lower risk of pancreatic cancer. Lower energy density foods tend to be healthier foods, so we get the best of both worlds.
Okay, and I want to share with you one chart by Chef AJ right now, and this is slightly different from the chart that Scott showed you, and it's not that it's better, it's just that it's slightly different, and it makes a lot of sense to me. His chart makes sense to me also, but for some people, they can relate with this also. This is Chef AJ has come out with this calorie density chart after she's worked with Jeff Novak. I think she kind of copied some of this, and not all the information is on here, but she says eat under the green line and don't eat to the right of the red line. So eat to this side, and you can see the number of calories in non-starchy vegetables, kale and chard and broccoli and, you know, radishes and whatever, non-starchy vegetables, 100 calories a pound. Fruit is 300 calories a pound. The unrefined complex carbohydrates like oatmeal, not the instant with sugar, but the, you know, groats and thick rolled oats and steel cut oats, rice, quinoa, the unrefined complex carbohydrates, potatoes, the whole grains, and the beans and lentils, legumes are 400 to 600 calories a pound. Remember, Scott told you that we eat 3 to 4 pounds a day. So if you figure out, you add up a pound of this with a pound of this with a pound of this, you'd have 3 pounds, yeah? And look at the calories that you'd have. You'd have, let's say at the top 600 and 300 and one, you'd have like about 1,000 calories with 3 pounds. And then you may want to add a little bit more of this column to get up to 12, 1,500, 1,600 calories. But when you start venturing over into this side, watch what happens. The most calorie density food on the planet is these oils, all oils, and they're 4,000 calories a pound. Now remember, Scott told you that in a tablespoon of oil, there's about 120 calories, which is close to 10% of your fat intake for the day if you had no other fat intake. So you really need to be careful about the amount of oils, and we try to avoid them completely. Again, you'll make a choice as to what's important in your life. Avocados are a healthy choice. The foods in purple are healthy foods, but they're calorie dense and are best included in small amounts after weight loss is achieved. Now, avocados, you know, if you have a quarter of an avocado intermittently throughout the week, it's probably fine. But the people who are eating 1 or 2 avocados a day, they're eating a large volume of calories, and it's hard for them to lose weight, in my experience. The same with nuts and nut butters, tahini that you might get in hummus. Mm-hmm. You can get a non-tahini hummus if you make it yourself. But Greger would argue that some nuts may lead to weight loss, but you just need to be careful and not eat high quantities, because look at their calorie density. And then the standard American diet, the foods that we oftentimes eat, the cheeses and sugars and stuff, 1,200 to 1,800 calories a pound. I'm not going to dwell on it because Scott spent a lot of time with it last week, but I just wanted to do a quick review and reinforcement. And with that said, I want to play one more video, which is chocolate bar density. It's a fun video.
Being aware of the energy density of foods is of tremendous value when it comes to controlling our body weight. And I have this simple little illustration to show you just how important it is. Here I have two food items. Exhibit A, the humble carrot, and Exhibit B, a chocolate bar. Also with me I have two friends, Tish and Heather, who have generously offered to eat and run, or at least eat and walk. Now what we're going to explore is how long does it take to burn off the energy contained within these food items. Now Tish, you get the carrot, and Heather, you get the chocolate bar. Bon appetit. Okay, Tish, you can stop. It's been 5 minutes and you've now burned off all the energy contained within that carrot that you consume. So you can relax. Heather, even though I asked you to jog, you've still got some time to go. Stick with it. You can stop. Well done, well done. You know, you have been running now for about 27 minutes and you've burned off all the energy contained within that chocolate bar. Now, the reason I got you to run as compared to walk like Tish is that it would have taken you near on an hour to burn off the energy contained within that food item. And the reason being is that a chocolate bar is about 10 times more dense than the carrot. As you can see, the energy density makes a huge difference. And if you're interested in controlling your body weight, opt for foods that are of low energy density. And for the most part, these are whole plant-based foods as grown.
Okay, so I think you have that point down, I hope, and we'll give you a chance to ask some questions here in a bit. But I want to carry on with one next issue. And that's, you know, I'm going to stop the sharing for a minute because I like to kind of see some of you anyway in the audience. Aside from what you eat, a lot of people believe it's the exercise that they do in this world that's going to make the real difference in their health. In fact, I can't tell you how many people have actually told me, well, you know, it's the exercise that I'm not doing, and that's why I have the problem with my weight. So I want to share with you some of the science connected with that, again, with a Dr. Greger video, and then you can make up your mind as to whether you feel it's the food choice that you make or whether it's the exercise in your life that is going to really make the difference. And so this one is, does it really matter how much exercise to sustain? Now, where is the how much exercise? I usually have this in order, but for some reason it got out.
On the top row there, number
top
6.
row. Oh, here it is. Thank you, Scott. Keep me going here. This old brain, you know?
Right now, almost 2/3 of Americans are overweight. And by 2030, more than half our population may be clinically obese. Childhood obesity has tripled, and most of them will grow up to be overweight as well. The United States may be in the midst of raising the first generation since our nation's founding that will have a shorter predicted lifespan than that of the previous generation. The food industry blames inactivity. We just need to move more. But what is the role of exercise in the treatment of obesity? There is considerable debate in the medical literature today about whether physical activity has any role whatsoever in the epidemic of obesity that's swept the globe since the 80s. The increase in calories per person is more than sufficient to explain the U.S. epidemic of obesity. In fact, if anything, the level of physical activity over the last few decades has actually gone up in both Europe and North America. This has important policy implications. Yes, we still need to exercise more, but the priorities for reversing the obesity epidemic should focus on the overconsumption of calories. To work off the increased caloric intake, which for kids is like an extra can of soda and small fries compared to what they were eating back in the 70s, and for adults like an extra Big Mac a day, to work that off, you'd have to walk like 2 hours a day, 7 days a week. So exercise can prevent weight gain, but the amount required to prevent weight gain may be closer to twice the current recommendations. Public health advocates have been experimenting with including this kind of information. The fast food menu labeled with calories and the number of miles to walk to burn those calories appeared to be most effective in influencing the selection of lower-calorie meals. Now, exercise alone may have a small effect, and that small effect can make a big difference on a population scale. A 1% decrease in BMI nationwide might prevent millions of cases of diabetes and heart disease, thousands of cases of cancer. But why don't we lose more weight from exercise? It may be because we're just not doing it enough. I mean, the small magnitude of weight loss observed from the majority of exercise interventions, where they make people exercise, may be primarily due to how low the doses are of the prescribed exercise. People tend to overestimate how many calories are burned by physical activity. For example, there's this myth that a bout of sexual activity burns a few hundred calories. So hey, you could get a side of fries with that. But if you actually hook people up and measure energy expenditure during the act, and your study subjects don't get too tangled up with all the wires and hoses, though it may be nearly the metabolic equivalent of calisthenics, given that the average bout of sexual activity only lasts about 6 minutes, a young man might expend approximately 21 calories during sexual intercourse. Of course, he would have spent roughly 1/3 that just lying around watching TV, just basal metabolism. So the incremental benefit is plausibly on the order of 14 calories. So maybe we could have like 1 fry with that.
So Gregor comes through again with a bit of humor to try to reinforce the point that what we choose to eat is extremely important. If you had one to pick, in my mind, it's what you choose to eat. Exercise is important. I'm not going to encourage you to lay around all day, but you're going to find out in the next video about lazy vegans and their overall weight change. I guess I'll play that right now for you. Thousands of vegans studied, and then I'll stop and we'll see if there's questions, because this is another very important video. It helped change my mind about what I eat and how much I should choose to eat some animal product.
So how do you prevent it? The first study in human history of thousands of vegans was just published in the Journal of the American Diabetes Association. Thousands of U.S. vegans studied for the first time ever. First, let's compare weights. A BMI over 30 is considered obese, between 25 and 30 overweight, and they used to call under 25 normal weight, but it's no longer the norm. The average BMI in this country is now 28.8. The first question is, where do flexitarians fall? A flexitarian is a flexible vegetarian who in this study is defined as someone who eats meat once or twice a month, but is basically vegetarian. Where do they fall? Three choices: heavier than meat eaters, lighter than meat eaters but still overweight, or on average not overweight at all. So do you think they found flexitarians to be fatter than regular meat eaters? Do you think those who only eat meat a few times a month are skinnier than meat eaters but still on average overweight? Or do you think if we cut down our meat consumption that low, our weight should normalize? This is America. Even the flexitarians are overweight. But what about the full-time vegetarians, though? Same basic three choices. Do you think vegetarians turned out fatter than flexitarians? Do you think those who don't eat meat are skinnier than those who do, but still, on average, are overweight? Or do you think if you just cut out meat, you'll lose the excess fat? This is America. Even the vegetarians are overweight. But, surprisingly, they are a significantly healthier weight than those who eat meat even only a few times a month. You can see where the trend is going. What if those vegetarians cut out dairy and eggs? Would they lose enough weight to become the only dietary group in North America that's actually not overweight? You tell me. Do you think cutting out dairy and eggs makes you gain weight? Do you think it would make you lose, but not enough to make that cutoff? Or do you think populations need to cut out meat and dairy and eggs to achieve a healthy weight? This is America, and that means only the vegans are, on average, a healthy weight. And that's like a 40-pound spread between vegans and meat eaters, which is pretty dramatic. But maybe it's not their diet. Maybe vegans just tend to exercise more. No. They carefully measured activity levels, and if anything, the vegans in this study exercised less than the meat eaters. Lazy vegans, but still, on average, 40 pounds lighter.
Pretty impressive study. So I'm going to stop for a moment and see if you have any questions, thoughts, and you know I can carry on into infinity here. So I'll put on the gallery and see if there's anybody who wants to speak up for a moment.
That was the Adventist health study that came from, right? Was that where that data was from?
Yes. Yeah.
There's a similar scenario with the Adventist health study. Why that's important for you all to know is that it controls for a lot of the other. You might be thinking, well, maybe the people that were eating more vegan versus the meat eaters had a healthier lifestyle than the other group, and it's why the Adventist health study is so profound and gives us so much information is because of religious reasons. They all have pretty healthy lifestyles. They don't tend to drink or smoke. They do tend to exercise. So they kind of treat the body as a temple. So you can kind of, they all led a pretty healthy lifestyle, but then you can compare just removing those animal products made a big difference. So it's not like the vegans were junk food vegans, because a lot of times, we all know junk food vegans that are still have a lot of weight issues. So because they're eating a lot of processed refined sugars and flours and oils and things like that. So the Adventist health study has been a really impactful data that we've gotten.
Thanks for going over that, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps you may want to do an experiment with your body by changing the foods that you're eating to a more whole food, plant-based. It's not something that you're committed to have to do for the rest of your life, but you may want to do an experiment for a month or two. Give it a try, see how you feel. And if you just are feeling great and, your values are coming back and, and improved, then you may say to yourself, maybe I'll do this another month or two. That's how I kind of went about it. I didn't want to do it and didn't believe it would really help me. I thought it might have a chance of helping my wife, but I really was not convinced. I was part of the medical establishment that didn't have any clue about whether what you eat has anything to do with your health. That was 10 years ago. Times have sure changed. Any other thoughts from anybody? Any questions? Were you surprised about the fact that about exercise and diet? You know, has that helped you change your thoughts? You don't have to speak up, but I'm just kind of throwing those out. Yes.
Raise hand on here.
Yeah, with your raised hand.
Is that me?
Yeah.
After she talks.
Okay, so.
Doug has something to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have several things. I'll just ask one question tonight. It's regarding, you know, I just got a publication. I get a publication from UCLA on health topics. And it said I should be eating 100, for my weight, I should be eating 100 grams of protein a day. And it seems like that'll be awful hard to do with vegan. I'm also pre-diabetic. You know, for 10 years, it hasn't gone up to diabetic, but, you know, I watch my sugars and
tell him your body weight and height.
I'm 5'10", with my clothes on today, weighed 147 when I went in and talked to my doctor.
Yeah, so the statistics as I understand them, eating about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight seems to be a reasonable amount of protein. In your case, that would work out to be about 55, 56 grams of protein. You're about 70 kilograms, is 150 pounds. So you're just under that. So 50 to 55, where they come up with 100 grams of protein, I'm not sure.
They say old people, I guess, don't process it as well.
He's 78 years old.
Yeah,
it's true.
He's losing muscle.
Yeah,
yeah.
So it's true that you don't absorb it as well as an elderly person, and you need more than the standard adult. But you kind of fall into the same guidelines as a professional athlete. Professional athletes need about, you know, an extra, you know, maybe 10% more. So instead of 0.6 to 0.8, maybe close, you know, right into that 0.8 grams per kilogram. And it's lean body mass too. It's not, so if somebody weighs 100 kilograms because they're obese, you don't figure out your protein requirement based on your actual weight. It's on your lean body mass. So whatever your ideal weight is what that comes from. But you know, there's no good, so someone that's recommending 100 grams a day for somebody that's your weight, there's no science to stand on for that actual number. It's really only the point, like Charlie said, the 0.8. So 0.6 to 0.8 grams per kilogram. And so that's why we don't often talk about the exact grams that people need for protein, because as long as you're getting enough actual calories in, you're going to get enough protein. Now, someone that's has a pretty poor appetite, is pretty lean, maybe is trying to build muscle, then you might choose to go with some of the higher calorie density foods. So you might, you know, if you're on that low end of the BMI scale, if you're like 19, 20 is your BMI, so you're closer to being underweight than overweight, you actually might want to eat more of those yellow light foods or the purple that Charlie showed there. You might want to eat more nuts and seeds and avocados and nut butters and lots of starchy vegetables, because those are going to be a little bit higher in calorie density. And so because they're higher in calories, if you're getting a higher calorie density, you're getting more calories then, right? And then because you're getting more calories, then you're going to be getting more protein, because no matter what you eat that's plant-based, it's all going to have lots of protein. And then if you want to really hedge your bet, add more beans and legumes, because they're, you know, have more than 50% of their calories come from protein. So if you're wanting to if you're trying to build muscle mass, you're doing some resistance exercise and you're getting enough calories and some of the tips I mentioned, then you're going to be golden. But and it's the same for someone that's an athlete, a bodybuilder. They're going to want to be eating more of the little bit more calorie dense foods as well to get enough calories to thus get enough protein. So it's that those are some of those myths out there about protein. And I'll ask Charlie this as a rhetorical question: how, in your 45 years as a physician, how many patients did you ever see with protein deficiency, which is called kwashiorkor? How many patients did you see?
Not
Me
one.
either. not one. So it's just, it's impossible. It's like, but how many people do you see with protein excess? So people with heart disease, diabetes, kidney disease, kidney stones, you know, cancer. I mean, all the different things that we see from excess calories, which is also excess protein. That's what we see every day. I don't go 1 or 2 patients without seeing somebody with one of those conditions. So it's, you know, whereas in 45 years, he's never seen a patient with protein deficiency. I've never seen a patient with protein deficiency. So it's kind of it's a non-issue. It's just one of these myths that goes around, and there's like a half truth to it, but there's really, you know, yeah, you need a little bit more protein, but let's actually break it down and talk about what that really means.
Well, now that we're on protein, we got to jump back to our first lecture and go to the slide. The slide,
oh, right,
which may surprise you. So we're going to go to the slide. Here it is. Take a look at this. We're going to compare 500 calories of animal-based food with 500 calories of plant-based food. So here's the plant-based foods. Here's the animal-based foods. Now, 500 calories of animal, if you do equal parts of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk, it fits into the palm of your hand. Whereas 500 calories of plant food, like let's say equal parts of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes, that fits into like maybe a basketball or maybe a volleyball size. You know, it fills you up. You have to eat a lot more volume. So you have to eat more but you get the same energy, same 500 calories. Let's see what you get in the foods. No cholesterol from plant foods compared to animal food. Very little fat, 4 grams compared to 36. But if this doesn't surprise you, I don't know what will. The protein is identical. And the reason why is because like spinach is 40% protein. We don't think of fruits, vegetables, beans, and potatoes as having protein, but they do. All plant foods have protein. And as you see, 500 calories of each, animal versus plant, have a similar amounts of protein. You do not have to worry about getting an adequate amount of protein. And then look at the benefits of beta carotene and vitamin C and folate and iron, magnesium, calcium compared to that you get in plants compared to animal. And look at this figure here, the fiber, that's the deficiency. If your doctor were talking to you about, hey, you need more fiber in your diet, that fiber is what's going to hook up with the cholesterol and wheelbarrow it out of your body. It's going to provide food for your microbiome, the bacteria that are producing serotonin, the anti-anxiety, depression hormones. They're going to, you know, you get anti-inflammatory effects from the fiber because the bacteria break it down to butyrate, and that butyrate's anti-inflammatory. But in animal products, there is no fiber. They have bones to keep their structure up. Plants have fiber. So if this doesn't help convince you about the protein issue, not sure what will, but do you have any questions about this perhaps?
The other thing about protein I like to share is that think about, so when is the time in our life we need the most protein? So when would you think we have a highest requirement for protein? Besides, we talked about elderly. What about when we were an infant, right? When we doubled in weight from our birth weight to 6 months, we double in weight, right? And so that makes sense. That's in our entire life, that's when we need the most protein. So what's the perfect food for an infant baby? Anyone want to throw it out? What's the perfect food for an infant baby? Perfectly designed for an infant.
Breast milk.
Breast milk. Yeah. Does anyone have a guess? So somebody guess what percent of the calories are protein in human breast milk? Does anybody know? It's 6%. Only 6% of the calories in human breast milk, the perfect food for infant baby, is in human breast milk. So that's all we really need is about 6% of our calories from protein, if you look at it that way. But when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet like Charlie and I are describing here in these classes, you're probably going to get 10, maybe 15% protein. You eat a lot of, if you really like beans a lot, or you're eating lots of whole grains and lentils and quinoa is really high in protein. So if you're even going a little bit higher on the starches and things like we were talking about, you're probably getting more like even close to 20% of your calories from protein. So that's like more than 3 times what you actually need. So if you even are just not even really trying and you're just getting 2,000 calories, eating as much as you want, feeling full, following the calorie density guidelines, then you're going to be getting at least 10% of your calories from protein. So, and you really only needed 6%. So that's a good lesson, I think, to kind of think about that. Oh, well, protein, that's why we try to dispel that myth and kind of, focus on fiber, because fiber is the deficiency disease. That's the deficiency nutrient in the American diet is fiber. 97% of the Americans are deficient in fiber, but nobody's deficient in protein. The only people that are deficient in protein in this country, it's about 3% of the population. It's mainly people that live in nursing homes and skilled nursing facilities, because they're just not eating very much. They're not getting enough calories. And so they're protein deficient because they're calorie deficient. And that's, just think about that population, that 3%. And the rest of us, we need to be worrying about fiber, not protein.
So I'm holding up a book. Can you read it? Proteinaholic by Garth Davis. He's a bariatric surgeon who busts the myth about protein, who's apologizing to his patients who he's performed bypasses on and told them to eat more protein, and why he no longer does that. If you're interested, you might find it interesting. Someone asked, how much protein do we actually need? We've been trying to answer that question to make it easy for you. The easy answer is don't calculate it. Stop it. You don't need to do that. You're wasting your time. As Dr. Esselstyn told me, don't do it. There's no need to do it. Just eat enough calories so that you're not hungry. Eat plant foods and you'll be healthy. And don't worry about the number. But if you have to have a number, if you tell me your weight is 170 pounds, I'm going to say, well, is that your ideal body weight? Are you overweight? What is it should be based, like Scott says, on your ideal body weight. And most people don't know exactly what that is, but you should be in the range of 19 to 25 or something, BMI, somewhere in that. So it's going to calculate out you need anywhere from 25 to 55 grams of protein a day, most likely, for the most people that we talk to. Now, if you want to count, go ahead. But boy, you could find joy in looking at nature, looking at the squirrel in the yard, or watching the birds fly, or looking at the clouds. It would give you much more joy in your life and be much more productive than counting up how much protein you're getting.
Well said.
Okay. We take a little literary license here and, get excited and whatever it might be, maybe a little bit more so than I have to. But I'm talking to a whole group of people I can't see, most of you. So, I kind of raised my voice. Okay, she says, thank you. That's the kind of feedback we're looking for. But if you need more information, we're here to give you more. Any other questions before we continue? Go ahead.
I don't know how to raise my hand anymore. I can't see anything that tells me how to raise my hand.
Okay, you got to go to the 3 little dots or the reactions or something.
Okay, well, I got your attention, so I'll forget that.
Okay.
So you need, are there 12 essential amino acids to make up protein or 9? I can't put my finger on it.
Well, I used to think it was 8. So I don't know how many there are these days, and I don't really keep track of it. All I know is if you're eating a variety of whole plant foods, you're getting all the amino acids you need.
Well, I just did some, how reliable the internet is.
Yeah.
So I've been getting a lot of information off the internet.
Yeah.
And So basically, I like what I heard. Beef, if you just eat beef or meat, you get a lot of amino acids, but it's still, you need some plants to get them all. And then plants are the same way. And so I'm just wondering, do you have any advice on how we make sure we get all 9 or 12?
Yeah, just eat a variety of plant foods and you'll get all the variety of amino acids you need. And if you eat the animal protein, you're getting amino acids, the building blocks of protein that have a lot of sulfur, and that's going to lead to increased colon cancer rates. It's going to lead to illness, not to health. So forget eating animal products for protein and for your health. It's just not, the science is not there for it. It's all internet hype at this point.
I'm laughing because of the amount of people, when the subject comes up of what you're eating or why your face is so skinny now or how you lost all that weight. And they say, well, how do you get your protein if you're not eating meat?
Well, what you do is you go to the chart and you compare 500 calories of plant food to 500 calories of animal, and you show them, here's the chart. You make the decision for yourself. That's where you get your protein. It's a bit of myth that you've been living under, that you have to eat animal products for protein. I'm going to go to a couple other questions and get back with you, Ken. Dolly.
Hi. I'm in a wheelchair all the time, and I've worried about not getting any exercise to speak of. How that's going to, I guess I don't have to worry about that with the plant-based diet.
No, you can be one of those lazy vegans that actually gets down to an ideal body weight. But I would encourage you to use like hold a can in your hand and move your arms and move your legs throughout the day. Whatever.
I do that. I just can't walk.
Yeah, if you just can't walk, then just keep moving. That's what I'd encourage you to do. Do stretching exercises and enjoy your life. Listen to music, read, do activities that you tolerate, and just say, hey, this is my life for now, and I'm going to enjoy every day as best as I can.
I have a question.
Yes.
How do we get the B12 vitamin in our bodies when we have only plant food? Do we have to take the pill, the B12 pill?
The short answer is yes, but not absolutely. So Scott, if you want to answer that for her, that would be great.
Yeah, so B12 is made by bacteria in the soil. And this applies to whether you're eating a whole food plant-based diet or a standard American diet. It's fairly deficient in B12 these days. So what they do is, I mean, it's in the soil made by bacteria, but because the soil has been kind of depleted of the bacteria, we're not really getting enough B12 from the soil, because it used to be it would get on the vegetables and things, and we would kind of brush it off and eat the carrot or whatever, and we'd get a little bit of soil in our diet basically, and we get the B12 that way. Also, we'd get it in the drinking water and things like that. But because we get a little bit of dirt there too with the bacteria that make the B12, but because we chlorinate the water, we wash our produce, we don't really get it from the original source anymore. And like usually if a cow is eating grass, it's getting a little bit of dirt with the soil and gets the B12 and it gets stored in the muscle. But because the soils, as I mentioned before, is depleted, the cows aren't really getting enough. And most cows that people consume today are grain fed, not grass fed. They're actually deficient in B12 as well. And so agribusiness tends to supplement B12 into the cow feed. And so they're getting the B12 that way. And so when you're eating the animal, eating the muscle, you're getting the B12 secondhand. You're getting it from a secondary source. And so if we're eating a whole food plant-based diet, when we're not eating the meat, we're not eating the animal muscle, then it's important to actually take the supplement. And we recommend, if you're under age 65, you take 2,000 micrograms once a week. If you're over age 65, it's 1,000 micrograms daily of cyanocobalamin. So that's the B12 supplement. So we recommend that. The other, so the other reason that even people that are eating meat tend to be deficient is because so many people have absorption issues, and people that, for example, a lot of people take heartburn medication, acid reducing medications like Prilosec and things for heartburn. And these acid reducing medications actually inhibit the absorption of B12 as well. So I have many patients that take these acid reducers because they have really bad heartburn because they have a poor diet, and they actually are B12 deficient. So I have them taking a B12 supplement as well. And so that's another bit of information. So it's not specific just to whole food plant-based eating, but I wanted to give that little bit of extra information. The only thing you really need to take away from that is, okay, I'm eating a whole food plant-based diet, or really any kind of a diet. You should, if you're under 65, 2,000 micrograms once a week. If you're over 65, 1,000 micrograms daily.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Scott?
Yeah.
What did you say? What kind of B12? I missed that word.
Oh, yeah. So the one that's most studied, Dr. Greger has it on his website, cyanocobalamin. So it's CYANOCOBALAMIN. So cyanocobalamin. There's also methylcobalamin also in the store, but cyanocobalamin is usually cheaper, has the most studies behind it. But either one's fine. But I would, if you didn't care, then just go with the cyanocobalamin B12.
Thanks.
And that's really important to have your B12 levels normal, because if your B12 levels are low, it can cause neurologic problems. So you can get numbness and tingling in your fingers and extremities. It can cause your homocysteine levels, which is an amino acid. Your homocysteine levels can go high, which when that happens, then it can cause inflammation in your heart arteries, and that's not good either. So, so it's important to have good B12.
So I have a couple more videos that I want to share with y'all. And then let's see. And then I guess I'll be done. I need to get rid of this. And I need to go back to the video. And I lost my place, which means I need to keep searching down through my hard drive here, but I'll get there. It's to the tip, number 12, complicated lifestyle here with all these files. And the next video is the role of processed foods in the obesity epidemic. Let's take a listen to see what Gregor has.
The rise in the number of calories provided by the U.S. food supply since the 1970s is more than sufficient to explain the entire obesity epidemic. Similar spikes in calorie surplus were noted in developed countries around the world in parallel with, and presumed primarily responsible for, the expanding waistlines in their populations. By the year 2000, the United States was producing, after exports taken into account, 3,900 calories for every man, woman, and child, nearly twice as much as many people need. It wasn't always this way. The number of calories in the food supply actually declined over the first half of the 20th century, only starting its upward climb to unprecedented heights in the 1970s. The drop in the first half of the century was attributed to the reduction in hard manual labor. The population had decreased energy needs, so they ate decreased energy diets. They didn't need all the extra calories. But then the so-called energy balance flipping point occurred, when the move less, stay lean phase that existed through most of the century turned into the eat more, gain weight phase that plagues us to this day. So, what changed? What happened in the 1970s was a revolution in the food industry. In the 1960s, most food was prepared and cooked in the home. The average quote-unquote not working wife spent hours a day cooking and cleaning up after meals. The husband averaged 9 minutes. But then a mixed blessing transformation took place. Technological advances in food preservation and packaging enabled manufacturers to mass prepare and distribute food for ready consumption. The metamorphosis has been compared to what happened a century before in the Industrial Revolution with the mass production and supply of manufactured goods. This time they were just mass-producing food, using new preservatives, artificial flavors, and techniques such as deep freezing and vacuum packaging. Food corporations could take advantage of economies of scale to mass-produce ready-made, durable, palatable edibles that offered an enormous commercial advantage over fresh and perishable foods. Think ye of the Twinkie. Look, with enough time and effort, any ambitious cook could create a cream-filled cake, but now they're available around every corner for less than $1, or even delivered straight to your door for 30 cents. Right? If every time someone wanted a Twinkie, they had to bake it themselves, they'd probably eat a lot less Twinkies. Right? The packaged food sector is now a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Or consider the humble potato. We've long been a nation of potato eaters, but they were largely baked or boiled. Right? Anyone who's made fries from scratch knows what a pain it is, right? With all the peeling, cutting, and splattering. Right? But with sophisticated machinations of mechanization, French fry production became centralized and could be shipped at negative 40 degrees to any fast food deep fat fryer or frozen food section in the country to become America's favorite vegetable. Right? Nearly all the increase in potato consumption in recent decades has been in the form of French fries and potato chips. Cigarette production offers a compelling parallel. Up until automated rolling machines were invented, cigarettes had to be rolled by hand. It took 50 workers to produce the same number of cigarettes a machine could make in a minute. The price plunged, and production leapt into the billions. Cigarette smoking went from relatively uncommon to almost everywhere. Right? In the 20th century, the average per capita cigarette consumption rose from 54 a year to 4,345 cigarettes a year by the time the 1964 Surgeon General's report. The average American went from smoking about 1 cigarette a week to a half pack a day. And tobacco itself was just as addictive before and after mass marketing. What changed was cheap, easy access. Right? French fries have always been tasty, but they went from being rare, even in restaurants, to omnipresent access around each and every corner, likely next to the gas station where you can get your Twinkies and cigarettes. But look, the first Twinkie dates back to 1930. Though, and Ore-Ida started selling frozen French fries in the 1950s. I mean, there has to be more to the story than just technological innovation, which we'll explore next.
Okay, so we can understand this is not just a matter of willpower, that there is industry influence. And let's see, I have one more video that I want to share on eating more calories in the morning to lose weight. And that is right here.
Look it up.
Mice are nocturnal creatures. They eat during the night and sleep during the day. If, however, you just feed mice during the day, they gain more weight than if you feed them a similar amount of calories at night. Same food, about the same amount of food, but different weight outcomes, suggesting that eating at the wrong time may lead to disproportionate weight gain. In humans, that would presumably mean eating at night. Weight management recommendations often include advice to limit nighttime food consumption, but this was largely anecdotal until it was first studied experimentally in 2013. Researchers instructed a group of young men to not eat after 7 p.m. for 2 weeks, compared to a control period where they continued their regular habits. After the night eating restriction, they ended up about 2 pounds lighter. This is not surprising, given that dietary records show they inadvertently ate fewer calories during that time. To see if timing has metabolic effects beyond just foreclosing eating opportunities, you'd have to force people to eat the same amount of the same food just at different times of the day. The U.S. Army stepped forward to carry out just such an investigation. In the first set of experiments, Army researchers had people eat a single meal a day, either as breakfast or as dinner. The results clearly showed that the breakfast group lost more weight. Check it out. Have people eat only once a day at dinner, and their weight doesn't change much. Have them eat once a day at breakfast, and they lose about 2 pounds a week. Like in the night eating restriction study, this is to be expected, right? Given that people tend to be hungrier in the evening. Think about it. And if you went 9 hours without eating during the day, you'd be famished, right? But people go 9 hours overnight all the time and don't wake up ravenous, right? There's a natural circadian rhythm to hunger that peaks about 8 p.m. and drops down to its lowest level at about 8 a.m., right? That may be why breakfast typically is the smallest meal of the day. The circadian rhythm of our appetite isn't just behavioral, it's biological. It's not just that we're hungry in the evening because we've been running around all day. If you stayed up all night and slept throughout the day, you'd still be hungriest when you woke up that evening. To untangle the factors, scientists use what's called forced desynchrony protocols, where they lock people up in a room without windows and a kind of constant, unchanging dim light, and make people sleep in staggered 20-hour cycles to totally scramble them up. Right, that goes on for a week. So, the study subjects end up eating and sleeping at different times throughout all phases of the day. Right? Then you can see if cyclical phenomena are truly based on internal clocks or just a consequence of what you happen to be doing at the time. For instance, there's a daily swing in our core temperature, and blood pressure, and hormone production, and digestion, and immune activity, and almost everything else. But let's use temperature as an example. Your body temperature bottoms out usually around 4 a.m., dropping from 98.6 down to more like 97.6. Now, is this just because your body, cools down as you're sleeping? No. You can show experimentally by, keeping people awake and busy for 24 hours straight that it happens at about the same time, no matter what. It's part of our circadian rhythm, just like our appetite, right? It makes sense then, if you're only eating one meal per day and you want to lose weight, you'd want to eat in the morning when, your hunger hormones are at their lowest level. Okay, but then things start to get weird. The Army scientists repeated the experiment, but this time they had the participants eat exactly 2,000 calories, either as breakfast or as dinner. Right? That takes appetite out of the picture. Right? They were also not allowed to exercise. Same number of calories, so same change in weight, right? No, the breakfast-only group still lost about 2 pounds a week compared to the dinner-only group. 2 pounds of weight loss, eating the same number of calories. That's why this concept of chronobiology, meal timing, when to eat, is so important.
Okay, that's something to give some thought to. And the last thing is there's a number of people who have difficulty, even with all the science, they understand this, have difficulty making the change. And so here's a little challenge from the Complete Health Improvement Program, which is pretty much what we're sharing with you.
Well, I would like to issue you a challenge. Do you like challenges? I hope so. This challenge is just for 1 month. Not asking you to sign your life away or make a lifelong commitment. I'm just saying for 1 month, I would like you to conduct an experiment on yourself. An experiment to see what happens if you make radical shifts to the way that you eat and the way that you move. Well, for the next month, I want to challenge you to move as far up the end towards the optimal zone as you're able. And simultaneously, change the way that you move. Break up your prolonged periods of sitting. Engage in moderate intensity physical activity, 30 minutes or more each day if you can. And what I will tell you is the extent to which you make changes is the extent to which you can expect improvements. And there's a particular group of people that I specifically want to talk to. And you'll know that if you're one of these, but there are some of us that need to make substantive changes to our health. You find yourself in a ditch, and you may have been in that ditch for some period of time. And yeah, you've made attempts to get out there, but they may have been small attempts, and it's like sort of taking these tiny little leaps trying to escape, and it actually becomes demotivating after a while. The best way to escape a ditch is to make a quantum leap. And so if you're one of those people that you know that you need to make those changes, I really want to encourage you over the next month as a self-experiment, give this a go. Change the way that you eat, change the way that you move, and you may well discover that this is a journey in a transformation towards living more.
And with that, I've completed what I wanted to share, but I had one more thing that I have to say. Some of you may need a little more help with making this change. And with us tonight, we have Lisa Chick, who's a medical student, has been working with us for over a year now, I believe, maybe a year and a half, I don't know. It's been a long time. And she's helped a number of people who are having problems with their motivation and with their questions. And so all you need to do is let us know or let her know that you'd like some assistance, and she'd be happy to share her knowledge with you. Lisa, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. I think it's only been since 8 months, since about June last summer, but it sure does feel like a long time. I'm a second-year osteopathic medical student at Western University in Los Angeles, in California. And I've had such a great time getting to know a lot of you by meeting with you one-on-one to see what you may need some help on. And it's actually not always about the nutrition. Sometimes it's the sleep or the exercise. Whatever it is that you may need a little guidance or motivation, some help with that. And it's really a learning experience for me too. I don't have as much experience as Dr. Ross and Scott, but I really enjoy getting to learn with you. And if there's something I don't know, I can, always go to them or look something up too. So it's been really helpful for me. And I think it's been helpful for the people I've talked to. And then I'll just put my email in the chat. So if you are interested, it's free. And then we just meet and discuss what you might need some help with. We also have a Facebook group too that you can also ask other people in the class for some advice or recipes or whatever it is. I'll put that in the chat.
And yes, they have been helped a lot of people, and thanks for all you're doing, Lisa. Anybody else? We're coming to the end of the time here. Time flies when you're having fun.
Next week, I'm going to talk about food addiction and behavior change. So stay tuned for that.
That's another important one. And, I always enjoy listening to that lecture. And so I encourage you all to come on back, give it another shot, and keep trying to get yourself motivated. And we'll all keep supporting each other.
I may have gotten confused along the way, just for a kind of a summary of what Dr. Greger said about breakfast. Are we supposed to be eating a lot of protein first thing in the morning or calories?
You're supposed to be eating the majority of your food in the morning.
So after I eat my beans and spinach, then I can have a bowl of oats.
Yeah. That sounds great. So you got your legumes, and you got your whole grains, and you got your veggies, and add a little fruit for dessert. And you'll have the 4 main categories.
Thanks.
The other analogy, Dr. Greger, it's in his book and the How Not to Diet book on the chronobiology, circadian rhythm stuff, but it's eat like a king in the morning, eat like a prince in the midday, and eat like a pauper in the evening. So that's the other analogy he gives. So eat the more calories earlier in the day than later in the day, if you want to lose weight.
Well, we've really thoroughly enjoyed all your input and discussion tonight. Any last words?
I had a question. What's your thoughts about coffee and tea?
I drink a lot of tea. I'm not a coffee drinker, but my wife occasionally will drink some. Scott, how about you?
Yeah, I drink some coffee. I drink decaf just because I got to where I was too sensitive to the caffeine after a while. But basically the science, as far as the coffee goes, the summation of the science is if you're not already drinking coffee, don't start. If you are drinking coffee, try to limit it to maybe 2 or 3 cups a day. And it's what you put in the coffee that's whether it's healthy or not. If you can drink it black, then it's probably fine to keep drinking it, maybe 2 or 3 cups. But if you're putting in a bunch of sugar and cream and junk into it, that's not so good. When it comes to tea, the green teas and some of the other teas are lots of antioxidants and whatnot. So it's again what you would put in the tea that would make it, whether it's unhealthy or not. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question on that.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oops, sorry.
Keep the questions going. Linda?
Yeah, what do you think about stevia?
It's a processed food, yeah? So it kind of fakes your brain out a bit. And so if you have to have something sweet, a little stevia is probably okay, unless you're not getting the health benefits you want. And then I would encourage you to try it without. I don't know what effect it has for weight or whatever other things that you may be interested in doing, but a little, it's a plant, but again, it's a kind of a processed plant, just like white sugar is a plant and it's processed. And so we don't know the full effects of all these things. So some people can deal with stevia intermittently, but I would stick with the whole food. But your choice. Go ahead.
So what about something like a little bit of maple syrup or honey? Is that the same?
So how much fiber is in that?
None. No.
There isn't very much in maple syrup or honey. So it gives you a blast of sweetness. So that means the fruit, when you eat that, it's not quite as sweet, not quite as appetizing to you when you're eating the honey. Is it a crime to have some honey in your tea or whatever it is? No, it's not a crime. It's just a matter of what works for you. For me, it works to just stick with the natural foods. For you, you may want a little bit of that honey, but if you're not getting the benefits, then consider, a trial.
I like
Go ahead, Mary.
Date syrup or date sugar.
Again, similar issue. Dates are a healthy choice because they're a whole food and you get plenty of sweetness with dates. Date sugar, I don't know if they're stripping out the fiber or not. If it's just they dehydrate the date and then they chop it up and they have the fiber with it, then it's okay. But if they're preparing it by stripping out the fiber, it would be healthier to just eat the dates. Grind them up in a smoothie or whatever you want to do.
Well, the food label on the date sugar just says dates.
So I guess I'd be curious how they're prepared. Do they, like rice says rice. It's white rice. They stripped away the fiber from the brown rice. So it is just rice, but is it depleted rice or is it depleted dates or is it the real date? I've really never looked into that. If you find out, let me know.
Well, date syrup's really easy to do in your blend Vitamix or whatever.
Yeah.
Beat what?
What?
Date.
A couple of dates with some warm water and a Vitamix makes a wonderful date syrup for all kinds of things. Very sweet.
Did you get that?
Thank you.
I planted a stevia plant last year, but I never really ended up utilizing it. I chew on some leaves occasionally when I was working out in the garden, and it's very sweet, even just not concentrated.
Yeah, so that's an okay thing. That's a whole food. You've got some fiber in there. You chew on the leaves, you'll get some sweetness from it. And It takes you a while to do it, you know, so you're not blasting yourself with a bunch of sugar. Any other thoughts from anyone? We good?
Doesn't honey have a lot of antiseptic? Isn't that good for you?
It's not good for me. I haven't had it for I don't know how long. It may be good for someone else.
A little bit.
Yeah, it may be okay to have a little bit of honey if you choose to do that. Scott, do you have any thoughts on honey?
Yeah, so it's just like, you know, the analogy with when the hunter-gatherer days, if you came across the beehive and got some honey, it would be a huge blast of dopamine, excitement, sweet. It's a lot of calories in a concentrated space. It's more like a drug where, yeah, putting a little honey in your tea or a little bit here and there, like we said earlier, it's fine. But if you're doing that a lot, lots of stevia, lots of artificial sweeteners, lots of honey, date syrup, all these different things, you're doing that a lot and having that in your diet frequently, then when you reach for that ripe peach or that pear or that apple or that banana or those berries, they're just not going to taste as sweet to you. They're not going to make you feel as, you know, fulfilled and happy when you're eating the fruit, when you're having all those concentrated sugars, the honey and all those things. Whereas if you if you still enjoy the fruit and you're doing that, then you're fine. But if, like a lot of people, and I'm this way too, the more artificial sweeteners and sweet things I eat, the less pleasurable the fruit is. And so if I just don't eat any of that stuff, then boy, that fruit's really sweet. That's my dessert. Like Charlie, that's his dessert. And you really enjoy that. The fruit's really a treat. So like Dr. Greger says, you know, the ripest peach is never going to taste sweet compared to Fruit Loops, you know, so it's fruit versus Fruit Loops. And so if you're eating the Fruit Loops, the fruit's not going to taste that good. But if you don't have any of that stuff, then the fruit's going to taste really sweet and it's going to be a real treat.
I just realized something about my use of stevia. I put it in coffee and tea, well, mostly coffee. And I don't drink a lot of coffee, but when I do, each day I use some stevia. And I realized that when I think of the coffee without the stevia, I go, yuck, I don't even like coffee. I like the sweet taste. And so I may as well eat something nourishing like fruit.
And have tea. I've gotten used to it. It was bitter at first for me, and now I enjoy eating an herbal tea without any sweetener or anything, and it's become good in the morning.
Yes, I like that too.
And the other thing about the honey is if you collect the honey yourself from the beehive and you know avoid the stings and the other things, that probably you probably wouldn't be using too much honey if you were the one to actually collect it rather than buy it from somebody else or whatever.
That's true. Just a thought. That's true of me too. I always used to tell my children when they were little, if you want to eat meat, you can, but if you see a dead chicken on the road, are you going to want to eat it? I mean, they don't know that it's a dead animal unless you point that out to them.
And then Lisa put in the room about how honey is processed in the supply chain. You may want to check that out. Go ahead.
So chocolate's supposed to be good for you. So I put about a teaspoonful of cocoa powder in my coffee in the morning. So how militant are you about that?
Yeah, so cocoa powder, I used to use that all the time when I was transitioning, and it's a healthy choice. A healthier choice is 100% cacao. I thought it was way too bitter initially, but my daughter-in-law taught me how to eat it. Just keep at it, and after about 10 times, your taste buds get used to it, and it's the healthiest form, the least processed.
Where do you get that?
100% cacao.
Yeah.
You can get that at Whole Foods. They have a bar that's 100%. You can get it on Amazon. There's a place in Cottage Grove that makes it. It's just the cacao bean that they, I don't know, chop up, and 100%. It's kind of dark, you know, it's bittery, but you get used to it, and it actually is pretty good after a while. Okay, just a thought. But in the meantime, your cocoa powder is fine.
Okay.
Not the kind with sugar though, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no sugar added. Okay. everybody, Scott, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been fun. We'll do this again sometime, like next week.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, everybody.
All right,
We'll see you in the movies.
See you in the movies.
Have a good week.
Bye, good night.
Good night.